Alexander III of Macedon, better known as Alexander the Great, became king at the age of 20 and had conquered most of the known world by the time of his sudden death at age 32. During his brief but eventful reign, he created a vast empire that stretched from Greece and Egypt all the way to India. Yet the young ruler's dream of further conquest were cut short by his unexpected death in Babylon in 323 BC. Here are some facts about the king, general, conqueror, and legend Alexander the Great. Alexander the Great was a member of ancient dynasty. Alexander the Great's name is widely known as the Alexander we know by that name. Few, however, know that before he became immortalized in history as the Great, the young ruler was known as Alexander III of Macedon. Alexander was born in 356 BC to King Philip II of Macedon and his fourth wife Olympias. Philip was a member of the ancient dynasty which traced its origin to a mythical period in ancient Greece. According to tradition, the dynasty's founder King Caranos was one of the descendants of the Hercules. Olympias was a member of ancient royal lineage. Alexander's mother was the daughter of the king of the Molasians, an ancient Greek tribe from Epirus. Olympus' illustrious lineage did not stop there. Her family claimed relation to none other than the Trojan War hero, legendary Achilles. Thus, Alexander could trace his origins to some of the most famous figures from Greek history and mythology. No wonder the young prince felt that he was predestined for greatness. Alexander's father paved the way for his military succession. Although his son's legacy nowadays overshadows his name, King Philip II of Macedon laid the foundation for the army that would help Alexander to conquer the known world. Under Philip's reign, Macedonia grew from a peripheral kingdom to a military powerhouse, becoming the leading power in ancient Greece. To achieve such a feat, Philip II used a diplomacy, marriage alliances, and most importantly, he reformed the army, making it the deadliest military force during that period. Philip did not only teach his son the art of war. As a Macedonian prince, Alexander was given the best possible education in history, in philosophy, in literature, in algebra, and many more other important subjects. Among them was none other than the Aristotle himself, the famous philosopher. Aristotle had yet to make a name for himself at that time, but he was known as the Plato's pupil. Thus, Philip II invited Aristotle to teach his son, promising to rebuild the philosopher's home in Stagira. 3 years of Aristotle's teachings left a lasting impact on young Alexander, inspiring a lifelong love for philosophy. Fourth fact is that he was an avid reader and his favorite book was Iliad. Considering his illustrious ancestry and high education, it is not surprising that Alexander was an avid reader of the great classics. He was particularly fond of Homer's work, the Iliad and the Odyssey. According to the 1st century Greek biographer Plutarch, Alexander carried a copy of Iliad, narrated by his tutor Aristotle, wherever he went. It was said that Alexander considered the Iliad a perfect portable treasure of all military virtue and knowledge. His favorite hero was Achilles, the legendary warrior. After all, Achilles was one of his ancestors from his mother's side. And like his childhood hero, Alexander too would take the Greeks into a fight against the East. Unlike Achilles, who perished in the Trojan War, Alexander would triumph, topping one of the mightiest empires of the East and creating a new powerful realm. Plutarch's biography of Alexander also tells us a famous story of love between man and a beast. When Alexander was 10 years old, his father was offered a large and magnificent horse. However, the animal refused to be tamed. Angered by his stubbornness, Philip ordered the young horse to be taken away. However, Alexander was struck by the animal's beauty and intervened, wagering that he could mount the fierce beast. Famously, the prince noticed that the horse feared his own shadow and was able to subdue the stallion. Alexander ended up keeping the horse, naming it Bucephalus. Which means the oxen. The two became inseparable, and when Alexander embarked on his legendary campaign against Persia, he chose Bucephalus as his main horse. Bucephalus accompanied Alexander through many battles, following his master on his quest to the end of the known world. Finally, in distant India, Bucephalus' journey came to an end. Around 326 BC, after the Battle of Hydaspes, Bucephalus died from battle wounds or possibly from old age. To honor his faithful companion, Alexander built a city on the banks of Hydaspes river, naming it Alexandria Bucephala. Fact was that his ascent to throne was a violent affair. In 336 BC, Philip II was assassinated by one of his bodyguards, who was then killed while trying to escape. Soon after the king's death, the 20-year-old Alexander was acclaimed as a new monarch by aristocracy and the army. However, some questioned his claim, and to make things more complicated, some suspected both Alexander and his mother, Olympias, of being involved in Philip's assassination. After all, the relationship between Philip and Olympia soared in recent years to the point that both she and her son were exiled from kingdom. But with the throne now vacant, Alexander wasted no time, and he was too quick to eliminate all positive obstacles to his reign. Alexander ordered the execution of his cousin, two Macedonian princes and other royal family members who he considered his rivals. Besides the purge at the court, Alexander had to deal with several Greek city-states which used Philip's demise to revolt. In a swift and brutal campaign, the new king defeated the rebels, severely punishing their leaders and restoring order. The pacification of Greece allowed the Alexander the Great to embark on his iconic Persian campaign. Seventh fact was that he was never ever defeated in a battle. Alexander spent most of his reign waging war against the Greeks with Greek city-states, Persian tribes or the armies of Persian and Indian kings. In his many battles, Alexander made full use of the phalanx formation and the companion cavalry, further developing his army into the most powerful military force of the period. Phalanx was a block of infantry packed tightly together with each soldier in the formation carrying a 4 to 6.5 meter long pike called sarissa. Alexander's military tactics and strategies are still taught in the world's most prestigious military academies. After all, during 15 years of warfare, Alexander the Great never lost a single battle. Alexander possessed immense personal charisma and bravery combined with excellent leadership. His constant presence among his troops raised the army's morale and solidified their will to fight. Another fact is that he named many cities after himself and one after his foes. Alexander was more than a mere conqueror. He was also a builder and founder of many cities. In fact, during his decade-long campaign in the West, he founded over 70 new cities. Unsurprisingly, the young emperor named them all after himself, except for one in India, which he named after his beloved host, Bucephalus. The most famous of them is undoubtedly the city that Alexander founded in Egypt. Alexandria at Egypt too was designed to be the capital of his new empire. Yet, it was not to be following Alexander's death in Babylon. The empire quickly collapsed in the wars of his successors. However, Alexandria at Egypt too retained its role as the capital of the mighty Ptolemaic kingdom, one of many Hellenistic kingdoms that emerged after the bloody wars. Alexandria outlived the Ptolemies, remaining the intellectual and economic powerhouse of the Roman Egypt. Alexandria outlived the Ptolemies, remaining the intellectual and economic powerhouse of Roman Egypt. Only in the Middle Ages did the place lose its importance. However, the town was revived in the 19th century, and today, Alexander City is Egypt's second largest and one of the most important Mediterranean centers.